Great. We're in a new location. The venture set has decided it's moving around now. We're going to all different locations. Might have to talk to you on camera about streaming from the VEED offices.
Absolutely, you're always welcome.
Wonderful. So flight to Amsterdam and then maybe just swing by Shoreditch while we're doing it and just live stream the whole thing?
Absolutely, easy. We'll get you some Starlink on the plane as well.
Oh, look, if we can do that, VEED can sponsor the show. I'll make sure we can take it on tour around the world. Josh,
amazing.
I feel like you've never done a podcast before, so I'm like very, very, very looking forward to this.
I have absolutely never done a podcast before, but I'm happy to be here.
And you decide to do a live one as your first one. It's absolutely
Why
chaos.
not?
Why not?
Baptism of fire.
Absolutely. First question, straight off the top of the dome. Why was VEED the right choice to move in as COO for you? Like, why this company?
Wow, it's a great question. I think it talks both to the company and what I was looking for at the time. So, my background was in finance. I started my career as an investment banker, then went to work as an investor in private equity for 4 or 5 years after that. And, I got to the point where I was really looking at what was out there in the world, looking at what friends, colleagues of mine had been doing that I thought could be really exciting. And I got to a place where I was really looking for somewhere where I thought, firstly, obviously great company operating in a great market. But really, for me personally, I was excited by the opportunity to go somewhere where I thought my skill set could both be used and provide value early on for the founders that I was joining, but also there was scope for me to grow over time. And when I look back to when I joined VEED, the team had just raised their Series A. Historically, the team had been very, very product engineering focused, which is, I think, exactly how it should be. But there were absolutely no corporate functions built up whatsoever. So for me, I saw that as a great opportunity to come in, show some early value, but then also be able to build out all these different areas of the team, which is what we've done today.
What was the pitch that Saba gave you to be like, hey, you've got to come?
Well, it was actually completely the opposite. I think if you ask Saba, he will honestly tell you that he didn't really want to hire me.
Why was that? Was it the PE background of I'm not going to do any work, you're going to strip out the company?
Exactly. Annoying finance guy coming to make his life difficult. So I basically wrote my job description myself. I think he sent me 1 or 2 bullet points in an email, and I was like, no, I think it should be something like XYZ. And we just went with it. And thankfully, it's worked out pretty well.
Awesome. All right. Purpose of this conversation today, right? I need to understand how you guys operate the ship, because you seem to have been able to move at a consistent pace and velocity that is very much akin to the Valley. Like, VEED ships everything so fast. I think I was at one of they're not firesides, but like mini conferences that you do. Summer schools.
The webinars. Oh, okay, nice.
I actually came into the summer schools, right? And within a week, you had shipped like 3 different products or 3 different feature sets. And I need to understand, both on the operations side, but also like the company ethos, how are you instilling that ability to just keep on shipping in everything that you're doing?
Yeah, well, I guess first and foremost, it obviously comes down to great talent. I think having the right people in the right seats makes, the world of difference. I think the next point will be, really making sure people have the tools and processes that they need to thrive. So this new cadence of weekly shipping is something that we really started a couple of months ago in terms of trying to get a new feature out the door every single week. We've always been fast, but this has been an acceleration. And I think that's also largely driven by how the market looks right now, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But one of the things we noticed is we were doing this at the very start in quite deep silos, which wasn't very effective. And so for a team like mine, the operations team, our job was really to say, okay, like how can we really put together a playbook to make sure that this can go as smoothly as possible? And when you're shipping something in a week, it's obviously not going to be plain sailing every single time. But I think our thesis is that if we have the right people, the right view of the world on what we should be shipping, and the right playbook in terms of how to execute it, we can make it as smooth as possible.
Like that, you have found a way to consistently be able to do that? Like, what is it internally that you found, is aside from the talent, aside from the company culture?
Yeah, so I'd say number one is having like a really strong view of the world. And what I mean by that is, there are loads of great video models out there, right? So if we were speaking about generalist sort of video generation, you would look at Google with their amazing video, look at OpenAI with Sora, etc. If you weren't really deep in the weeds, you might say, okay, any video company out there should go and try and compete with them. But obviously, that's not always the smartest decision. So for us, I think the edge on the product and engineering side is working out where we can really have a competitive edge in terms of, really opinionated and finding things that we want to ship that we think both are differentiated, but also will resonate with our CP really strongly. And that will never mean we should release a competitor to Sora, for example. I think on the other side, it's also about how we set up the team. So whilst you'll see VEED as a company shipping something new pretty much every single week, that normally and hopefully is not going to be the same product and engineering team shipping something. So they have the appropriate time to, plan, develop, and then the marketing team have time to get ready for launch. So intentional about how we line up these launches. And as we build more and more of a muscle for doing that, we're getting better at saying, okay, we should cherry pick these few things in the roadmap from these different teams and line them up so that we do have a really nice launch cadence over the next, 1, 2, 3 months.
Internally, have you started using tools like Lovable on your end? I know the engineering team maybe not, but like for ops, for HR, for finance.
Yeah.
Have you started using some of these no-code, low-code tools to sort of build your own dashboards,
Absolutely.
build your own products? What has that been like? Has that really been a step change from your private equity days?
Yeah, so I'm a massive Lovable power user myself, I would say, and a lot of my team are also now, producing incredible things with Lovable that we absolutely wouldn't have been able to do a year ago. So I have absolutely no idea how to code. I had an idea of something I wanted to build. I've made now 3 or 4 different things myself. The first of which was like a headcount planning tool, super sexy. I'm sure everyone will be massively excited about that. Headcount planning tool. And then we were looking for, some form of task tracker. So obviously there's Linear, which is incredible for product and engineering. But I said, okay, I'd love to have something that I can use with my team. And Linear isn't so perfect for that. If we wanted to buy something, you'd probably be looking at like $10, $15 per seat per month for a Monday.com, whatever. And I said, okay, I can probably build this in 2 or 3 hours now that I have Lovable. And then like 3 or 4 similar tools as well that I've done myself. And we're seeing pretty great adoption of tools like this across the business. So not just in, ops, HR, etc., but also, people like designers, product managers, just in terms of being able to prototype things. So I'd say it's unlocked a ton for me personally and my team. I mean, the first idea that I mentioned, I tried building it for the first time 18 months ago or so. That was when ChatGPT was getting pretty good, but there weren't really any of these code building tools. I got maybe 1% of the way there. I then tried to build a version with Cursor. I think Cursor is an amazing platform, but I don't think it's that great for people like myself who really don't know how to code whatsoever. So got maybe like 30, 40, 50% of the way there. And then, 3, 4, 5 months later, discovered Lovable. And I was like going from not being able to do anything to building these like fully fledged platforms with backends, with authentication, using APIs. And it's like, it feels crazy. Like if you had told me that I'd be able to do this 2 years ago, I would not have believed you for a second.
I'm in exactly the same position. I spent the first 3 months of 2025 literally just like ripping through Cursor and like a lot of Cursor credits to try and figure out like what can I do and what can't I do. I always found the backend database and authentication like really difficult. And then literally 3 months later, just seamless. There's just an agent that does it. And I'm sitting here like, should I have gone and built product, or am I like, is the show the thing I should do? But I'm glad I didn't go build product. I'll leave it to the guys over at VEED.
Exactly.
How do you think about scaling the organization, right? You run it really lean, but at the same time, obviously over time it will grow. There's a heavy onus on engineering versus like some of the more peripheral ops teams, because that's where a lot of the value of the company comes out of. I'd love to understand the mental model of like how you think about building an AI first company. Seems a bit ridiculous now, but a startup today that's moving into hyperscale mode.
Yeah, great question. I think it differs somewhat by org. I'd say we always have been and always will be like a product engineering led company. And I think that's the way that any company like us should be. So, we always look to hire the best possible people in product and eng. The profile of those people has maybe shifted somewhat over the years in terms of, needing more skill set in the AI world. But, a lot of our existing team have been able to build those skills themselves as well, which is obviously amazing. And then on the other side of the door, like in my team, for example, I would say we've always intentionally been behind the curve in terms of the headcount that we bring in, et cetera, because I personally have a strong thesis that, as time goes on, people will be able to do more with less. And I think a lot of these tools that we're now seeing and spoken about, for example, and there are a few other examples I can cover as well, really like increase the productivity per person in a sort of back office team by such a ridiculous factor that, we today can do exactly the same, if not more, with the same two people that we had in a certain function than we
So,
could,
Josh,
a year or two ago.
do you purposely stay behind the curve so that the team is put under a certain level of pressure to enhance every single little bit of productivity through using these tools, etc.?
In ops, I would say yes. And when I say ops, I mean, functions like HR, talent acquisition, my biz ops team, customer service. I think these are all areas where people are now getting so much more productive that I would rather let that play out before needlessly adding more headcount to a business. I think it does come with some challenges as well, being candid. We have not yet ever hired a graduate at VEED, for example. I would love to be able to do that one day. I would love to, but more from a perspective of giving back. I was a graduate in a graduate program once upon a time. I think there are great companies out there that are much later stage, your Googles of the world, who have really found a way to mentor people. I think for us, we're still in that scaling and hyper growth phase where every single person is so laser focused on their remit that I actually don't think it would be fair for us to hire a graduate because they wouldn't get the training that they deserve. But yeah, to answer your question, sorry.
No, I was going to say, like, just to pull on that thread a little more, this idea of, the dropout becoming more, like, there are more people dropping out, more people wanting to drop out, more people thinking about building startups and companies themselves. Do you not feel like that if you were to hire a grad, they sort of have this mental state of training of how they think a company should be that isn't akin to how you build VEED?
Yeah, completely. And when I say this, I mean mostly in my team. In engineering, it's very different. You do have these crazy 15, 16, 17-year-olds who are just absolute geniuses who can kind of hit the ground running from an engineering perspective. And I remember very clearly when I joined VEED in one of my first weeks, there was an engineer sitting next to me. Was chatting to him for a few days, and then someone finally told me he was 16 years old, which obviously, as someone coming from investment banking, private equity, completely blew my mind. So I think that's incredible. We will always encourage that. Where I don't think we are yet, or potentially anytime soon, is being able to offer these like very structured training programs in HR, in operations, etc., that you might see at some of these bigger companies.
Clear. All right, makes a lot of sense. What's your favorite thing you built with Lovable?
Oof. I actually think this is so nerdy, but I think headcount planning tool, you would be amazed at how messy headcount planning can get in terms of, who have you got in your team today, who needs to hire, who needs to approve those hires, what's it going to cost, keeping track of those roles as they go through like talent acquisition processes. We had tried to do it like 100 times in spreadsheets, and none of the sort of legacy HRIS tools, etc., have very good solutions for this until you get to like your SAP, ERP type systems, which obviously we don't want to buy. So that was a nice one. Had a lot of fun building it as well. It's really addictive. It's honestly like my closest comparable for that is being like 16-year-old Josh addicted to playing FIFA on PlayStation.
Does Josh still get to play FIFA on PlayStation?
Josh does not.
That's the whole point of why we do all of this, right? It's like AI is going to make everything better. We're going to have more time on our hands. They're not just pure play productivity gains. But
I'll blame my girlfriend for that one rather than my job.
I love it. Can I ask why the team split over two areas? A lot of startups today, a lot of companies today are sort of going back in person, back all in the same place. Was having the team split over two countries, done purposefully, or did it just happen organically?
No, so it definitely was hugely organic. Obviously, the company started in the UK. Back when I joined VEED nearly 4 years ago, we were actually fully remote. So we had this little workspace in London.
Oh, awesome.
But 99% of our team were remote. And then a couple of years ago, we decided to build a bit more of an in-person presence. So, today we have London, Amsterdam, Barcelona, and we also have a hub in the Philippines as well. Not with an office, but we have a big team in the Philippines. And I think what we're seeing over time is there is definitely some benefit of being together in person. Just one example, a couple of weeks ago, there was an engineer and a data scientist sitting next to each other in our Amsterdam office. Those people may never have spoken in a remote setup. And 2 weeks later, they had built their own data bot where people could plain text, like ask questions to this bot. It would go through all of our databases and provide responses, which again, to the earlier point, massively improves like efficiency of our teams. That conversation probably never would have happened remote. At the same time, we still have probably 50% of our company remote today. We absolutely, don't plan on changing that. So it's about finding the ways to make these teams be able to collaborate between that in-person and remote environment.
What have you found works in that way, right? Then what's great about working remote in the context of VEED, and what is the type of tooling culture you've fostered to allow people to make sure that they're still innovating in their own rights, but can work from anywhere in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first and most obvious example of why remote can be great is you have access to so much more talent. Like we have people all over the world still, Eastern Europe, even places like the north of England, we never would have hired if we were just based in London. So in terms of access to talent, that's the really obvious one. And then I think for communication and processes, it's really about making sure you actually bias to those remote people rather than in office. So, product to having a product or engineering meeting or whatever, it will never just be in person in the office around a table. Like there will always be some way that the remote team are fully looped into that as well, because otherwise, you really do risk isolating the remote people. But there are obviously some things as well that just happen in person now. That's fine because it's those organic conversations that happen between two people next to each other, like I mentioned before.
Clear. Makes a lot of sense. Right. I want to understand a little bit about the transition from private equity into this type of role. For you, was it difficult to get rid of sort of the bad practices that you've picked up of working in a corporate, or was it actually just surprisingly easy because of the pressure of private equity?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the only honest answer to that would be to say both, which is a bit of a boring answer. But what I mean by that is the biggest difference for me coming in was that when you're working in private equity or investment banking, consulting, whatever, you're so used to this massive triangular structure. And what that means is, me as a vice president, senior associate, whatever, you are always sitting below someone who has done exactly your job before, which means if you've got a question about something, if you don't know how to do something, or even your work's being reviewed, it will always just go to someone who has done exactly the same job as you before, which means you're working with this group of people who, may be diverse in profile, but are not diverse in skill set. Everyone has done economics, maths, whatever, speaks in financial lingo, all of that good stuff. Whereas you come to somewhere like VEED, I was working directly for Saba, our co-founder CEO, who, amazing product visionary, but he'll be the first person to admit he's not very deep in the spreadsheets most of the time. And so for me, a lot of the stuff I was doing at VEED was completely uncharted territory. No one had done it at VEED before. I also didn't really have anyone to ask if I had, a problem, a question, which I think really can be the differentiator between people who will thrive or die going from that corporate environment to the startup environment, because you really have to be able and willing and actually love navigating through this chaos, figuring out problems by yourself and just getting on and executing. The other thing I would say I actually found quite challenging, definitely took me 3 to 6 months at least to figure out, is actually just how to communicate. And again, what I mean by that is
surprisingly difficult, right?
It's crazy because I went from a world where, like I said, everyone was quite similar. They would understand exactly what you were saying all of the time, and people spoke in a very, very similar way. I then come to VEED, and like I said, I was sitting next to this 16-year-old software engineer who, had no idea what EBITDA was, probably had no idea what revenue was either.
I tell you what, I don't think many people know what EBITDA is.
Fine, we'll go with revenue then. But it's you actually have to adapt your communication style so much to cater. I was within my first month or two speaking at our all hands presentations, for example, so presenting to the whole company, and then rather than just having finance people there, you have designers, product managers, engineers, HR people, talent acquisition people. You get my drift. And so you have to be so intentional about how you talk, but also how you listen to people, because I think communication can be an important factor, obviously. So it was tough to adapt on that for sure.
What have you found? What has changed in your communication style? Is it just this lack of overcomplicating things and talking in jargon and just dumbing it all the way down and speaking a language everyone understands? I had Magnus from Buy Founders and Data Crunch on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he was explaining to me when he talks to founders and invests in them, he has this common language that he shares, which is sci-fi, because typically the people building these insane products have read a lot of sci-fi or watched a lot of sci-fi. For you, what's your dictionary almost? What's your Babelfish for understanding how to communicate at VEED?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, listen, some of it you pick up over time. Like in my first week, I obviously had no idea of any engineering or product concept whatsoever. But when it's me communicating, I think there are two very different things. So I think the first of which is if someone like myself is talking to the whole company, I'm very careful, not to use acronyms, explain things very carefully, default to people not understanding any of the technical things that I might be about to say, and basically oversimplifying it so that we make sure we get everyone on board. And then the other part is like if you're speaking to a distinct group of people, so a group of engineers, for example, you end up just learning over time, like how is the best way to communicate with an engineer versus an HR person versus a finance person. I think that's the sort of thing that can only really happen naturally and from repetition.
Yeah, I agree, right? It's just you sort of have to build up this human relationship with people, but do it virtually sometimes and try and understand like how they think about the world without asking them how they think about the world. Then you have this mental model on how to communicate with people. And I assume at a company level, and when you're speaking at all hands, that's significantly more difficult.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that point of, going for the lowest common denominator. Like you want to be sure that you're saying things that every single person in the company will understand, which means maybe your speech is a little bit boring for the finance team, for example, but actually for some other group of people, that's exactly what it needs to be to make sure that the message is heard. Because otherwise, worst case scenario, you end up excluding people. People just like drift off, don't understand what you're trying to say.
What's deeply difficult for you at VEED right now? What is like a real bottleneck in the company in terms of ops?
Ops? Not very much. I think we are more productive than we've ever been before in the ops team, which is amazing. And I think that comes down to the point that we discussed earlier about like productivity and working out how we can really empower our teams to do more with what they have. And we mentioned Lovable already as a great example. I think another great example from this year is our transition from HRIS and ATS systems to a new platform. So we started using a tool called Revolut People, which is a really interesting tool. Essentially was developed by Revolut for Revolut, and then they ended up selling it. And they have an all-in-one place where you can do your human resource information system stuff, a HiBob of the world. You can do your applicant tracking, so hiring, but you can also keep all of your OKRs, performance data in there as well. And I personally love that because you basically make sure that you have end-to-end performance cycle from the point where you start speaking to someone through to when you hire them, through to their reviews, through to their goals, etc., all in one place. And again, another great example of being able to do more with less. So that's been another great productivity driver for us as well.
The Revolut People, I've heard
go for it.
so many great things about this product. And you sort of expect that from a company like Revolut because they are just like design gods, they're engineering gods. They scaled Revolut to, I don't know how many people now, but I'm assuming a couple 100 million plus or at soon 1 billion. And it's like, well, I'm just going to go build the product internally, and then I'm just going to make it into a completely new revenue stream for us. I just thought was just insane.
Yeah, and what I like about it as well is Revolut are obviously very famous for their performance culture. There's the Quantum Light framework sitting behind it, which people may or may not know about.
What is that?
I think that really closely resonates. So Quantum Light, as far as I understand, is actually Nick's personal fund, and they invest based on data signals rather than the traditional VC pipeline. But they also developed a lot of sort of playbooks on how to run great teams. And I'd be lying if I didn't say the way Revolut operates, people internally has some lovers, has some haters. They obviously necessarily need to take every single thing from it, but there are absolutely some really incredible learnings that you can take from those playbooks, and they resonate very closely with me and how we like to operate performance culture at VEED as well. So the fact that the platform was built around those playbooks and around that performance culture, it's a very different DNA to a tool than something like, one of the legacy players that nowadays are relatively sleepy, inflexible, and are not actually set up to help you achieve like peak team performance.
Josh, as we get into the end game of this particular segment, I've got to have you back on because I'm going to quiz you on all things ops. I love to ask guests on the show who their favorite founders, and for VCs, who their favorite investors are. Often, I get someone that's been at the intersection of both. And so for you, I'd love to know, who are your two favorite founders, generational founders from all time, and investors? Who's on the Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, great question. So on the founding side, I would probably give credit to people who are building incredible things today. Obviously, there are so many great tech companies that have scaled beyond belief, and absolute respect to them. But I get more excited about the things that are happening right now. I think we mentioned one or maybe both of them already. I think Lovable, Anton and the team at Lovable are doing incredible work. And I think I'm very personally excited about that, as probably came across on this show. So would definitely put the Lovable team on the list. Potentially Nick at Revolut as the next one. I think what he's done
I'm
to disrupt
so
the
surprised
banking
no one has
sector.
ever said Nick. He's unbelievable from my research. No one's ever mentioned him, so thank you so much.
Listen, don't know him personally, but like what's achieved at Revolut is beyond belief. So people with their Lloyd's TSB bank accounts in the UK, and now they're able to do this whole plethora of things through a mobile app. It's ridiculous. And obviously their user count and revenue, etc., all through the roof as well. So massive shout out.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
Listen, I not on a little bit say Luciana at Sequoia has been a great partner to us. So a shout out from Sequoia. Can you still hear me, Viraj? You broke up for a second.
I can still hear you.
Okay. And so what have I got left? One more investor.
One more
Can I go
investor.
for another founder instead? I think that's more fun.
Of course you can.
Okay. Well, then let's go with, I think, a company who are doing great things in a relative parallel to ours, which would be the 11 Labs team. We are trying to pioneer the video space. Video is nothing without great voice as well. And I think what 11 Labs have built in the voice space is really incredible. And we actually take a lot of inspiration from what they're building in terms of, weekly shipping, how they're going to market now with social video, etc. So I think huge respect to that team too.
I've had, who have I had on? I've had on a lot of their marketing team, right? I had on Lewis Jordan and Alec, who was also at VEED at one point as well, right?
Alec is ex-VEED, yeah.
Yeah, so like I've always found that in the marketeers and the people building these, what is now GTM, there is a mafia of them that I think long term are going to redefine what it means to build launch videos and just marketing in terms of tech companies. 11 Labs is an incredible product, and I guess next time I have to ask you, why don't you just go build an audio motor? Why is it that you work together so well? But we'll leave that for another episode.
Good. I need time to think about it.
Josh, this has been awesome. I'll see you soon.
Cheers, Viraj.